One more time. I'd like to call the meeting to order. And do we have a motion to adopt the meeting's minutes from March 26th?
Motion.
All approved?
Second.
Aye.
and-
Aye. Okay. Oh, I forgot that for a second. Okay.
Start with Rob.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm going to go through our phishing campaign. We, as of the last quarter, we actually ratcheted this up. Bit of a challenge, but we had some issues kicking off our quarterly phishing campaign after we segmented from H&H. So it took us a little while. So we actually ran the quarterly in May. As you could see on the red line, our phishing susceptibility went up drastically. And that's because we are now emulating what might be delivered to us via AI, which are more realistic and more difficult to discern whether they're phishing or not. We still had a high number of people reporting suspicion, but it's lower than normal. But we did hit 28.4% in discussions with Ganesh and me and others. We felt that wasn't unrealistic based on the reality of what we were sending out. We did have also an increase in repeat clickers because the potential for this to be real was there. So what we're going to do with this is rather than run quarterly phishing campaigns, we're going to move this up to monthly. We're going to be looking for people to get accustomed to questioning what's coming in their mailbox rather than look for the easy kill. This is the reality of the threat at this point with AI generating a lot of these phishing campaigns.
Rob, what are the new or adjusted tips and tricks to
So
identify it?
as you know, we tag every incoming piece of mail that comes from an external source. In the subject line as external, and also at the top, we tag it as this is an external email that's highlighted. So that should heighten awareness. I think people just are taking for granted that the simple phishing campaigns usually have misspellings. You don't expect them. What these phishing campaigns have is they're addressing you by first name. They're actually, Ganesh would get a message literally from you, Talia, saying that I don't understand this report. I need you to call me right away. So it's more personalized than what they've seen before, and therefore it becomes more believable. What they're not paying attention.
How would they know?
Well, if it's coming from you and it's coming from an external source, that would be a first
Okay.
the first line. Or if it's coming from me to my subordinates, it would be coming from external, and you'd have to question that. We're going to be sending out some tips and tricks and understand, and visuals so that people, are refreshed with that. But I think that if we move this up to monthly rather than quarterly, people will get hit with these more frequently, and they'll get that at the moment training that this is a phishing test that you've just failed. There's a little bit of shame in that, when you receive that big orange flyer saying you just failed. But we will be sending some information out through the information security mailbox, letting people know what to look for and just to act more vigilantly. But
'Cause I know some of very legitimate emails that came externally to me were blocked, and then IT and Angela identified them and sent them to me as legitimate. My question is, have you heightened kind of your diligence in not even passing through some of the external emails? Did we change the threshold?
we haven't. There are more emails getting blocked. I think we're at about 50% at this time that are being quarantined or blocked. Depending on the sender, depending on the reputation score that it pulls with our front end, which is a very reputable email defensive application. So we have not changed that algorithm at all. Um, but more and more are being flagged as questionable.
Does it make sense to relook, given that the threat is more challenging right now?
Um, I would I'm a little hesitant to change that for fear that more malware and things of that nature would come in. But we can certainly look at it. I'm not aware of something that was deliberately blocked that was being sent to you, but I'd like to take a closer look at that, and I'll
No,
work
no,
with
no.
Angela on that.
I
What?
mean the other way.
Yeah,
I mean,
she
did it
means be
tell you that?
stricter.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think 50% is pretty tight, you know.
Not giving it any.
I want to make sure people are getting what they need. And, sometimes things are very time sensitive. And if things are blocked erroneously and you're not aware of it or it goes into quarantine, we might run into, regulatory requirements for responding. So, I think we're strict. I don't, I'll take a look, but I don't see, tightening the belt on that. I think we need to just have more awareness that a lot of these emails are becoming more realistic. And like I said, these are very personalized at this point. It's saying, Robert, your manager Ganesh is questioning the attached report. Please review and get back to me. That sounds pretty realistic.
Mhm.
And if I weren't looking for those tags, those external tags, I would fall for it in a second. But I'll take a look at it, Talia. You're asking, so I will.
I mean, the macro environment is
Mhm.
more challenging. Obviously, what happened with H&H, right,
Hmm.
is uncomfortable. So I think that, it's time just to reevaluate. You're the expert. I'm just asking, should we reevaluate maybe?
Okay, I have no objection to that. Um, the odd thing about the H&H piece is that it actually came from an internal source. So was that would have been difficult for anybody. I think it was difficult for anybody who received the message. But what I don't understand is how it went undetected. So and I'm trying to get more information in that regard.
What happened with H&E?
They had a massive breach, massive, and apparently it says,
Yeah.
3 months under.
Yeah, they had the
Yeah,
threat
there
actor
was
get inside the system
They
and
had to shut, did they have to shut down their? What was breached? Medical records or?
yeah.
Yeah,
What was breached at H&H?
I think a lot of personal identifiable information and some PHI. I think a lot of employee information was breached.
Yeah, it covered everything. It covered both
Yeah.
staff and
Mhm.
patients.
I'm trying to pursue the root cause of it on how it happened, but um, what I'm receiving back is that it's still under investigation and they're not really willing to talk about it till they have final conclusion on everything.
You could just
I-
listen to the testimony of the Senate when it comes.
I was going to say, with
The
the federal
government
government
all
being
the way
interested,
through.
I understand why they are making sure that their investigation is as thorough and finalized as possible. Absolutely.
Yeah, but as a fellow employee, I'd love to understand it because I may, I may have to, you know, understand how it happened so it doesn't happen to us. And
Exactly.
that would be very beneficial. But, they have their motives. So anyway, we're looking to make this much better and tighter. And I had to pull a baseline on it, and this is our new baseline, so we know where we have how much effort we need to put into it. Any questions?
I only knew the phishing one that I did because of like Talia does not email like that. That's
Well,
not
that goes along
sounds
with,
what she talks like. That's how I knew.
if it's
Like, you don't have
unexpected and
that.
questionable, you should always report it, right? That's what we're trying to stress here. And a lot of people did report it. I'm kind of happy that they did, but we still have a lot of people that did fall victim to it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's good. It gives us a better baseline. Now we know what we need to do to tighten it up.
Rob, we just have a question. Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Robert, hi, it's Carla. Do you guys do any sort of tutorials for staff to help them understand, like, if something's questionable, like look at the email of the sender?
So Yeah, so like I said earlier, I'll be sending some tips and tricks and and awareness through the information security mailbox out to full staff, trying to build some visuals so that they know exactly what they should look for. But we'll be sending that out within the next couple of weeks.
We also have components of that that are part of our, both our annual compliance training and our onboarding training for all staff. So the information security modules contain those kinds of references. This is what you should look for in phishing attempts. It classifies the different kinds of phishing attempts, what they look like. So yeah, both when people join us and then annually.
Just found out my own work, that our IT person sends like once a month, he sends like a little short email, just like showing something that was fake. And it's been super helpful to just have a kind of constant reminder. It takes 10
Mhm.
seconds to read it.
Yeah.
And there were things I didn't understand that he just quickly explained. So
Yeah, so we'll kick up the awareness on this. This is an Achilles heel, I think, at the moment. Any other questions? Okay, I think we can move on. So again, system health, our mail defense, email delivery was at 50%, Talia. So I mean, we're capturing a lot, and I think that that's really aggressive, to be honest with you. Most of our email defense deliveries in the past, have hovered around the 40 to 50% range. So um, I don't know that that is going to prevent us from being breached. I think it's more behavioral than it is anything else. Um, Antivirus hovers around 90%, 99%. That's almost passive. Every time you log in, you're going to get a new antivirus signature, and our patching cadence remains in the 90s. So the tech services team is very diligent on that, and that's where a lot of malware and things could come in as well, and exploits. The security incident management SLAs are all within our established goals. And just at the top of this slide, we are addressing end of life applications and services. So SQL 2016, as of this writing, was at 79%. I think we're at about 84% at this point, and that comes end of life in July. And Windows Server 2016 comes end of life in January of 2027. We're at about 34%. If any of these are not addressed, and I mean even as much as 1%, we will subscribe to additional security patching from Microsoft. So that gives us a little bit of buffer. But I think right now the SQL piece will be done on time. That's what it's looking like at the moment. Any questions? Okay, let's move on, please. So from an investigative perspective, our behavioral analytics for user behaviors went up significantly. And I think a lot of that is due to failed phishing and other elements. And assets also went up, and that was that's due to two factors. One is the additional equipment that was put first time on the wire to address the segmentation effort. The other piece is a result of new equipment that's being introduced into the system to address the end of life equipment that we're decommissioning. So not totally unexpected. We keep our unreturned equipment. We keep tracing that. It's not just the security team that chases it. It's HR. It's tech services. It's a team effort. Very tedious. We had no lost laptops, no lost iPads, and 3 lost phones. And we are constantly doing staff investigations, and these are sanctioned by either legal, compliance, or HR. Most of it's usually HR. And this is just to give you an indication of the activity that we see during the course of the quarter. Any questions here? Okay. Can we continue, please? Business continuity. So we're wrapping up the last year's business continuity plans. We're asking all chiefs to review their team's plans and sign them off. So in order to move towards a current business continuity plan, we need last year's plans to be signed off. So I believe that there was some training that was given by the team to all the chiefs and their assistants so that we can close the books on last year and move on to this year. The team reviewed 222 critical processes across all the departments, documented 149 unique applications, and we're also documenting unique vendors and the work that we rely on them for. So the team's been pretty busy, not as busy as last year. Last year was a monumental year in terms of prepping for segmentation, but this is was pretty busy just to close the books. Any questions? All right, can we move on, please? I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this chart. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. We are very consistent in addressing code for applications. I think the great success here is that we're starting to leverage Copilot and AI tools to identify code that needs attention and mitigation plans around it. So, and this was a long time in the making to get a chart that is somewhat understandable. But any questions on this? Okay, next slide, please. And these are the measurements of our delegated vendors. If you see, there's a downward trend for Integra, 30 points. There's also a downward trend for Evolent on the left side of 60 points. And Health Edge also had a downward trend. And all of those trends are due to encryption updates that are pending. So it's it's called the SSL config. And quite often, most companies that show this downward trend are being bit by the SSL configuration. They're not timely. Eventually, they get to it. And I'll look for next quarter for Integra to show a positive trend once they address those configurations. But overall, the delegated vendor measurements all remain very strong. I think there's only one
Rob?
that, yes.
The data breach, or is the public for their vendor?
For DentaQuest? As of this writing, I did not have that information. So it's still under investigation. We are receiving more detail on a weekly basis from them. My understanding is it's less than 500 records on our end. I think they said about 100, but that still needs to be verified. We just received a CrowdStrike report from them that did not reveal too much. From my perspective, for the most part, that breach occurred because their MFA, their multi-factor authentication, was using pure text, and they used social engineering. The bad actor used social engineering to coax an employee to provide them with the multi-factor text message in order to gain access to their systems. As a
They're
reason,
still, oh, sorry, Rob, I thought you were done.
no, it's all right.
I was going to say, but they are still working with the FBI at this point in those investigations. So while the existence of the breach has been publicized, they have that information on their website. The more details are not being shared while they're still doing the investigative portion.
Right. And as they do gather more information, they're meeting with us to let us know. There's a there was some action taken on their end. They found the account that this bad actor came in through, and it was and they changed the credentials on it. They added a MFA app rather than pure multi-factor texting, and they're deploying that throughout the organization. We're doing the same right now. That's one of our goals, is by September, the end of September, to deploy multi-factor application rather than using text messaging. because it is a weaker way of authenticating, and I don't want to fall victim to what they fell victim to.
Did they, was that breach across all of the plans that they deal with?
Our understanding is yes.
Yes.
Yes, it was
Yes.
certainly not limited to us.
Yeah,
They
we
don't know the entirety of who it was, who is affected, but it's absolutely not limited to us.
Yeah, one of the questions that I'd asked is what the universe looked like and how much was out there, and they couldn't really tell us at that point. I am expecting their score to take a nosedive. You know, you could see that they're at 770, which is very respectable, but they're probably going to lose a lot of ground on this one. And again, this was one account that was breached. It wasn't a widespread. There was no ransomware detection. There was no malware detection. It was simply somebody gave up their multi-factor and the bad actor got in. So it was as simple as that. Any questions on this?
Feels very vulnerable right now.
Yeah. Everything is.
Yeah.
Mhm. Do we have another
Okay.
slide, Rob?
No, this concludes it. The final slide we'll talk offline on. Thank you.
All right, good morning to the committee. Just give a brief update on where internal audit currently stands with operations. Going through the list here, member applications, we're currently in draft report stage. Part of the process involves review both by compliance and management. Compliance brought up some good questions, which is leading to some follow-up on the audit. So that's why we're still in draft versus final. The ESRD population management is in progress. I actually had a very good meeting yesterday with product, and we are discussing the reconciliation process. They have a documented workflow in place. We're now looking to understand some members that we don't quite understand how they fit into the picture, but we believe we have a good understanding of the causes. We just now need to understand it and document it. And the direct provider payments, that is commencing. We actually have a meeting later this afternoon with one of the areas. And just as a refresher to the committee, that is involving payments that we make to providers that are not part of the normal claims process. The other two audits at this point are scheduled for later in the year. And that's all I have on this. We go to the next slide, please. And currently, with all audit reports, there are corrective action plans which are not always completed on time or have other reasons for non-completion. And we have 3 of those corrective action plans still open across 3 different audits. And that is the internal audit report. Is there any questions I can answer? Thank you.
Good morning. This is our standard agenda, so we can move to the next slide. We'll start with the 2026 compliance work plan updates. As you can see, we are reporting by our category. So this is our annual activities. Some of them, based on their timing, are already 100% complete. And others will be completed throughout the year. For example, service verifications takes place twice throughout the year, so it will close out near the end. And our quarterly reporting, same thing. You'll see 25% complete because Q1. Next slide, please. This is just more of our annual activity in the corporate compliance arena. We have to do an integrity review of ourselves every year. That is 70% complete. We also undergo a chip audit every single year, and we are finalizing that. We've submitted our responses since we put this in, but obviously we have to wait back to hear back from the auditors. And then exclusion screening will also always be at 25% per quarter because we do those activities monthly. Next slide. In our privacy arena, we have done our first set of quarterly walkthroughs, and then our compliance assessment is about 50% completed at this point in the year, which obviously matches for June. Next slide, please. Vendor compliance. We are still working through getting through our vendor operational audits more efficiently and timely. We are 90% complete with the SS&C operational audit and 70% complete with DentaQuest. We will essentially close one audit and start the next immediately once it's done because of the timing. Our vendor exclusion screening, again, is an activity that takes place every month. And so since this is Q1, you can see that it was 25% complete at the time. And we are also working through some additional annual activities in the vendor compliance arena, which includes collecting their compliance attestations, evaluating our vendor delegation oversight program, and then making sure that we have the right vendors, the right assessment, and are we going to make any updates or modifications to how we oversee our vendors, and we review that activity every year. Next slide, please. And this then also speaks about our verification of delegated function activity, which is wherein we ensure that both the compliance team and the overall vendor delegation oversight subcommittee, which obviously reports up to this committee, has the comprehensive understanding of what functions are delegated to what vendor. We can often, during the course of a vendor relationship, give them additional functions to perform on our behalf. And so we want to make sure we're always assessing those in terms of the delegated requirements. Next slide, please.
Okay, so this is the status of the SIU Q1 work plan. So we're quarter in, so we're on track to be at 100% on all these deliverables for the DME, labs, genetics, PH prescribers.
For the product compliance team, again, as a reminder for the committee, this is the team we have that works on our individual lines of business and the compliance components that are specific to those products. And so we are managing implementation of the corrective actions required for the chip audit. And then we are doing Article 44 readiness. This is a process that we are evaluating and working through and modifications around because the state changed the timing for Article 44s. We no longer are on a dedicated biannual schedule. And so we're having to reevaluate how we plan for and work through our Article 44 readiness, which is why you see it. The schedule is that
Whenever they want. Yeah.
what it amounts to. Their statement to us was, we have the option to come back anytime once it's been 6 months since a plan of correction was approved. We can come back. And we're like, well, that is not plannable. So that is why, we previously we had a cadence calendar. And so we would know, okay, Article 44 is going to be December of this year. We'll start our readiness in this quarter, working through our business units, planning all of that to understand, because it is obviously the entire company that's pulled into the mix for an Article 44, how to achieve that same level of readiness on a random schedule is part of what we are working through now, how to do that.
Be like 30 days notice.
Yeah, well, I mean, the other thing is too, we've seen in other operational surveys, like on the MLTC side, we got notice of a full-scale operational survey with no lead time. It was like, here's your letter, your audit is starting, zero awareness. And so we had thought that that area would be moving more toward a standardized Article 44 approach, but it seems that the mainstream areas are moving more toward that methodology. But we are trying to reevaluate and accommodate accordingly. But yes, we're very worried that we're not going to have any significant lead time.
Well, then we're hearing there's another plan that's undergoing the audit right now, Article 44. And the report from there is that it is absolutely brutal. That it's a level of scrutiny they've never seen before. And apparently the auditors are just pulling random people from the company. So this is no longer, I think that it's no longer that we present the individuals who are the most equipped to, no, randomly pulling people from the company and interviewing them for the audit.
So as we said, we are seeing it go the other direction from what we expected. And there was a formality before, and and what we've seen is a real loss of that formality in the approach.
But I think we're trying to adjust as much as possible. We're taking the lessons learned from the MLTC map audit and trying to apply them at least in how we're preparing our documentation. So previously we relied heavily on the Medicaid contract. Well, now we're making sure that we're incorporating the CFR references that we know that they're looking for. So we're trying to adjust where we can prepare, and then everything else is just kind of drilling into everyone across the organization, the importance of just staying ready.
It's
Good question.
yes, absolutely.
Particular things that they're, like looking to trip you up on?
Well, I wouldn't have said necessarily that before, but because the Article 44 is it's the full scope of our license, right? And so, I mean, they don't look at Medicare because that's distinct. But in the last couple of years, they've even started, they didn't used to pull the commercial lines of business into the audits, and now they do. We are seeing very intense focus on our policies and procedures, which has always been the case. But one of the things that was very unexpected that as Pam was saying, in terms of lessons learned, is they were like, we want your policies to explain your technology relationship. And so if you have a technology workflow, we want your technology workflow to reference which regulatory requirement it's fulfilling. Not at all an expectation that we had before.
Makes it easier for them.
Exactly, but they're like, well, we can't, it needs to say, I'm configuring my system in this way to meet this regulatory requirement. We'd never had an expectation that belonged in those policies. The broader policies that talk about our operational function, sure, but so the shift is significant. And so I think it just feels like we would have known 3-4 years ago where they were going to focus, what was critical to them. And now it's really shifting landscape all the time.
BH is a huge
Oh,
focus,
Right.
huge focus. Then the other one is just looking at claims,
Mhm.
right? The claim accuracy. That's what we're hearing. as
Yeah.
well.
And I will say on behavioral health as well, again, to the lessons learned, we've seen in smaller audits that the way, and Pam will talk about that at a certain point, that the way that we were monitoring was at a broader organizational service level. How are we paying our behavioral health claims? How are we doing that activity? And what we're finding is they came and they said, in this sub-service segment, you underpaid 200 claims, and now we want a full audit in just this one service. So we were doing extensive monitoring up here, and they're now coming for every tiny segment underneath, and that requires a modification for us to make sure we're ready and prepared for that. And we'll talk about those things, but you'll see how we're you'll see pockets of how we're having to modify across the board to try and bring ourselves to readiness and preparation. If there's no more questions about that, we can go to the next slide. Business process monitoring, it is where a lot of the compliance work around that readiness and preparation happens. This just lays out this always ongoing monitoring. So to echo Anthony, this is going to be at 25% because it's Q1. This is what we're doing all year long. Looking at our vendors, looking at ourselves, and looking at, specific pockets of focus that we are focusing on because of prior corrective action plans and statements of deficiency that we make sure to incorporate into our review. Next slide. Same thing. Next slide. Same thing. But you can see BH gets its own special segments. And everything you see on this slide is specific things that we built into our business process monitoring because of prior audits, prior results, and activities that we needed to do. Next slide, please. So these are just some highlights from across compliance. Our exclusion screenings across the board, obviously completed for Q1. This is our case investigation overview. This encompasses all mechanisms of cases getting to us. We received a total of 71. 37 were triage, meaning they were not compliance investigation based, and they were handed off usually to our member services team. And then a total of 34 compliance investigations were opened in Q1, and the total investigations closed in Q1 was 8. Next slide, please. This is our privacy activity. So again, all mechanisms. We received a total of 27 reports. Privacy cases are almost never triaged and handled entirely within our unit. So obviously 27 were opened. We were actually able to close a significant number of long-standing cases in Q1. So we were able to close a total of 29 privacy investigations, including 17 from 2025. And so obviously, because this is Q1 reporting, we have a total, at the time of this, we had 27 total open investigations in the privacy arena. Next slide, please. This is our policy and procedures reporting. There are currently 365 open policies and procedures across the organization. Q1 had 82 P&Ps initiated for their annual and regulatory review. We are expected under all of our various role sets to review all of our policies and procedures every year. It is a significant and massive lift. And as you can see, of the 82 that were initiated in Q1, 49 were able to be finalized and published in Q1. And then you can see across the board just that the visual at the bottom, although I recognize that it is extremely tiny, we can work on that in the future, thank you, Angela, appreciate that. We do break it down across the stages and organization, because again, every policy goes through business units, different levels of review framework. And we also make sure to involve the interdependent departments. So if you say, I do X and I hand it off to member services, member services confirms that, and we check that there's a policy in member services that talks about that same activity. Next slide, please. So these are the surveys and requests. So this is handled by our compliance operations team. These are what we generally refer to as, they are occasionally standing, but often ad hoc requests from our regulators where we are required to provide data or information. So that we receive these from DFS, CMS, the Department of Health, NISO, OMH, across the board. And so you can see that where the numbers are. Q4 was a little bit lighter than Q1, but we received a total of 141 data production and survey requests in Q1. And so 9 from the federal government and 69 from New York State. And the volume is just a lot. It's a lot.
Excuse me, when you say data requests, though, are you talking about pertaining to an investigation, pertaining to ongoing reports? Or are these all ad hoc requests that are coming in?
I would say a small portion of them are standing. So we have to send a particular BH report every single month. Our team does track that, but actually the vast majority are. We got an email from the state that said, here's a template, please fill this out. We need the following data on how you're doing authorizations. We need the following data on how a network question, I think, was another one that we had to do. It really does run the gamut in terms of what these surveys look like. But if you want a breakdown in the future, we can put together a breakdown of what's a standing report and what is an ad hoc report. But we're also seeing a lot more, how would I classify it? We get a request for data and we learn in the existence of that request for data that this will now be an ongoing data production. So we'll get a request that says, hey, fill this out. Here's your template. And now you're going to have to do this every month, or now you're going to have to do this every quarter, without sort of advance notice. So we are seeing a lot of what was ad hoc requests, to your point, turn into perpetual production.
And does that mean that like this, like the state is getting pressure from the feds? Like that's how that's working? Like they're being asked for information, or?
We think it's a combination. Sometimes it's direct, and and so meaning the Fed said, we want this, and the state will come and tell us, hey, no, you can't have an extension because I have until Tuesday to get it to CMS, and we will know that. But in other instances, yes, we believe it's related a lot of the time to federal pressure, but it's not direct. They know that CMS is going to come asking about X, and so they're working that through now. So it really can be a combination of both. But yeah, I think a lot of it is them having to ultimately prove to CMS the next time they come asking, are you fulfilling your obligations, responsibilities, et cetera? Next slide, please. This is an update of our regulatory implementations. At the time of this writing, there were 96 regulatory implementations underway. 42 were opened in Q1 of 26. We also were able to close 29 in Q1 of 2026. And then you can see in the graph on the right, the breakdown of the implementations by line of business. And as you can always see, mainstream Medicaid will always have the largest total volume because we get regulatory updates every day. And so, but you also see that we're seeing more of those activities in the commercial space as well. Next. Oh, and then the bottom chart on the left explains to you the implementation level. So a level 2, which is 69 of the 96, that is the classification where it branches across the organization. It is multiple factors that are involved, but the activities we need to take are generally very prescribed by the state, as opposed to a level 3 where we have to make a lot more strategic decisions about what and how and when. Next slide, please. Okay, and these are just regulatory updates. There are many, many more things that happened in the budget and in the legislative session that just closed. But these are the biggies that came out of the budget activity for us. The largest, most important, biggest one is that Medicaid was removed from the independent dispute resolution process. We've been advocating, it went into the process a couple of years ago. In just us alone, additional Medicaid payments for just the 2-year window of 24 and 25 was over $5 million in additional payments as a result of the IDR process. And so we are really hoping to see that this reduces that additional Medicaid dollar expenditures, also reduces the volume of cases, right? We see there are, IDR cases in the thousands. However, there was actively and intentionally no reform for the commercial spaces, which includes the essential plan. So all of the commercial lines of business, including the essential plan, remain subject to the IDR process with no reforms to the process itself, because we were advocating for reforms in that space.
Okay.
So, for example, the current framework is that the independent dispute resolution entity can only choose between what MetroPlus paid and the provider's billed charges, and they have to put it up against the Fair Health billed charges database. So we were advocating, first of all, that the database being used should be the allowed charges database, because the only place that billed charges is what it actually costs out in the world and in the actual market is basically inside this IDR bubble. Other reforms that we were asking for included more controlled timely filing limits, allowing them to choose a payout other than billed charges to the provider. So right now, if they think that we paid too little, the provider then automatically receives their billed charges, even if their billed charges are, in some instances, hundreds of thousands of dollars above the market. They're entitled to all of it. We actually received a case that was filed for $1.2 million of billed charges. And if they thought we had paid too little, even if, right, they are unequivocally entitled to the 1.2 million. And so that's a reform we were asking for that we did not get. Another big one is that the legislature told DOH to pursue getting an extension and modification on the MCO tax. And the framework that was approved is that, and that they will take to CMS, is that this will meet the CMS requirements by modifying the tax to be across the board for every line of business and product that a plan offers, with the exception of Medicare, because obviously New York State can't tax Medicare, and that it would be a uniform tax across the board at a 0.35%. And so they will be bringing that to CMS in the hopes that CMS will then say, yes, you meet the federal requirements to do this, and your MCO tax will be able to continue beyond December 31st, 2026. Next slide, please. These are the other two major ones. One is that the undocumented individuals over the age of 65 that was carved into Medicaid in 2024 will be carved back out of managed care and into fee-for-service in 2027. This is related to federal activity and directives. CMS issued essentially a notice to all states that if federal funding is not involved, something is not Medicaid. So everything that New York funds through their state-only Medicaid, they are not, supposed to be calling it Medicaid anymore, and it can't be a part of the general Medicaid bucket. We're still seeing ultimately how that's going to play out, but this is one of those items. By moving them back to fee-for-service, they're able to more effectively keep them in the state-only funded bucket. And we, based on the data analysis, about somewhere between 2,000 and 4,000 people will be disenrolled from MetroPlus effective 1/1/27. And the other one was that school-based health centers are permanently carved out of managed care. Yes, Valencia. And so we have been starting and stopping on the carve in of school-based health centers for years. And so this appears to have finally laid it to rest statutorily that it will stay in fee-for-service. And so we have ceased all of our implementation activity that we have been doing over the last 5 or 6 years around this topic. Next slide. And these are just some regulatory highlights for Medicare. I won't walk the committee through everything because obviously it's a lot, as it always is out of CMS. And we work through all of these with our teams, making sure that we are ready, prepared for what is coming. Next slide, please. More of the same, so you can just go to the next slide as well. These are some of the state highlights. So the first one is just a really good example where this is a federal rule, but New York State has to interpret these rules. And so we often find ourselves waiting for that state interpretation to know precisely what to do. In this case, we finally received the DOH guidance around authorization requirements and how it was going to play out under this federal rule. And then one of the items that you'll see a lot of this is interoperability. For anybody who was, around watching TV in the 90s, interoperability is the implementation that doesn't end. You could sing that song. We've been implementing interoperability for 4 years, 4.5. Yeah. And they just keep adding on. So it really is the implementation that doesn't end. I don't think we'll even ever tell you guys it's going to possibly be ending because we don't think it will.
School-based health centers was like almost 30 years, so.
So you're like, is it
We gotta have
reiterating?
Wow. Well, 2020, I know when I went to the state was in 2000, and that was one of the first things I was told I had to do.
I didn't realize it had been that long. I've only been in the mix for 19, so I guess I was. Wow, that's amazing. So I guess we have that to look forward to, Pam, with interoperability. Yeah. Next slide, please. And this is just some updated information. This is all about coverage that was enacted that affects our commercial lines of business, the essential plan and QHP. Despite the fiscal challenges, what we see is that New York continues to expand coverage and mandatory benefit coverages across the board. Next slide. And I believe that's it.
That's it?
Executive session.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Do we need a motion?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, can I have a motion to move into executive session? Motion. Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, can I have a motion to go back into regular session?
So moved.
All in favor? Aye. Okay. And now are we ready to adjourn, or is
Yep.
motion to adjourn? Boy, all of that should have been one motion.
To resume and adjourn. I like it. Yes.
Be by consent, by general consent.
Yes. Yes.
Yes. All right. Goodbye, everybody.
Oh, thank you. Bye-bye.